we're going to start Chapter 4 backwards. Chapter 4 completes what we call the accounting cycle, and I'll talk about that in the chapter. But first thing we're going to go to is we're actually going to go to the appendix of Chapter 4 PowerPoint, and we're going to start with what we call the worksheet. Oops, hold on, guys. Let me get my little pointer up here, my little laser pointer. Okay, so there's going to be an end of period spreadsheet, and it's called a 10-column worksheet. If you actually look in, if you look in the files or right up on the module, you'll see 10-column worksheet. And so just so you know, it's in there. You probably won't need it, but you need to know how to do it. Okay. And so these are the steps for the 10-column worksheet, or spreadsheet they call it, but we're going to get started. We're going to start here. We always start from the unadjusted trial balance. So all of these, so basically what we have is we have 10 columns. So I have 2 columns for unadjusted trial balance, 2 columns for adjustments, 2 columns for adjusted trial balance, income statement, and balance sheet. And hence that's why it's called a 10-column. Each set of categories up here has a debit and credit side. So this is really just an aid in helping you figure out the other financial statements. And so this document is not a formal document. It is never used as a formal document. A lot of companies don't use it. Most of the homework will say it's optional, but if you don't do it, sometimes you will lose points on the homework. So the first thing we're going to start with is we're going to start with the figures from the unadjusted trial balance. And if you remember, that came from the end of chapter 2, where literally what we did was we did a trial balance of all the account names and their balances from their T's. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is in chapter 3, we learned how to do adjusting entries, and we did them. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to write them in here. We take our adjusting entries from chapter 3 and we just write in the credit, well, for A, the credit and the debit. So we're just writing numbers in. Okay, we're taking the adjustments that we did as a journal entry and we're plugging in the numbers. And it doesn't make a difference if you do this first or if you actually do the journal entries first. It doesn't matter which way you go first. Next, we're going to either add or subtract and bring balances over to the adjusted trial balance. Now here's the rule of thumb. If I have a debit here and a debit here, I will add. If I have a credit here and a credit here, I will add. But if I have a debit and a credit, I will subtract. So let's take a look at this. So I just want to make it a little bit larger for you. So for example, I had a debit here, I had nothing here, I just brought the balance over. Here I had a debit and a debit, I added them to bring the total here. But here I had a debit and a credit, so I subtract the two and put it in the column where the larger number was. In this case, the larger number was debit here. So the debit 2,000 minus the credit of 1,240 gives me a balance of 760. Same thing here. 2,400 debit, 200 credit, subtract gives me a debit of 2,200. So we're going to do that all the way down. Let's see, here I had a credit of 360 and a debit of 120, so I'm going to subtract and put it in the credit column of the thing. So the balance always goes in wherever the larger number was. Okay, so that's how we fill that out. Then you check your totals. Now, just FYI, if you were to add these numbers to these numbers, they will not equal this number. Your whole purpose of adding these numbers is to make sure that your debits equal your credits. So this is called a partial worksheet when I'm only doing 6 columns. But from here, all we're going to do now is move these numbers either to the income statement or to the balance sheet. And the numbers moving to the income statement will be from the revenues and the expenses only. Everything else will move over. So let's take a look here. So here we got, and let me go ahead and balance it out. So I just want to bring this to your attention. I'm going to make it bigger so you can see. And so here's what I've done. All I did was take these numbers here and copy them. I'm not adding or subtracting anything. So I just copied them over. This was dividends. So here are my two revenue accounts. I just copied it to income statement. These are my expenses. Okay, so here, so I'm going to add this up. So these are my revenues. This is my total revenue. These are all my expenses. So these are my total expenses. So here I'm not going to balance, but these are my expenses. This is my revenue. The difference between them is called net income, and that's going to be posted right here. So this is my expenses. 7105 is my net income. When I add it, it would equal my total revenue. So if you notice, and same over here, you're just going to add in this column, you're going to add in this column. They should not match, but the difference should be your net income. So here's what I want to point out to you. If you spend less than you make, you will have a net income. If you have a net income, your numbers will be here and here. If I spent more than I made, if these expenses exceeded these revenues, I would have a net loss, and hence the numbers would go here and here. Okay, so again, this is an optional thing, but I'm really focused on this. I want you to know how to do it. There will be homework questions with it. There will be test questions with it. And you'll find it at the appendix of the actual PowerPoint. Okay, and with this spreadsheet, you could then turn around and start to prepare your financial statements. Here's some information on the worksheet. I'm going to skip by this stuff, okay? You can come back and look at it. So here we get to this point, and I'm going to stop here and continue on a next video where it starts to do my financials.